Next, we need to understand that the rabbis teach that the 12 tribes are not united today, and that the 10 tribes of the northern kingdom thus are not united and a part of the Jewish people today. Now, in the book Moses and the Original Torah by Abba Hillel Silver, published by the Macmillan Company out of New York in 1961, the following is stated: two distinct traditions are reflected in the historical and legal writings of the Bible, one of northern Israel and the other of southern Judah. In a sense, Israel and Judah were always two separate peoples. They were never truly united, even during the period of the United Kingdom. They parted completely after the rebellion of Jeroboam in 933 BCE. These two peoples shared a common racial origin and many ancestral memories, but their historic experiences from earliest times differed with each other. In the book A Matter of Return by Rabbi Raphael Eisenberg, pages 129 and 130, the following is explained. There is a dispute between the rabbis in the Talmud as to whether the 10 tribes will ever return to the Jewish people. The debate is not whether they have or not. The debate is whether they ever will. And Rabbi Akiva, who in 135 proclaimed Bar Kokhba as the Messiah in the revolt against Rome, said that the 10 tribes would never be united with the Jewish people. Now, the reason why he took that position is because the uniting the 12 tribes is associated with the revealing of the Messiah, because it's taught that the Messiah is going to gather and unite the 12 tribes of Israel. So since he's proclaiming Bar Kokhba as the Messiah, the 12 tribes couldn't have been united yet, according to that thought process. So that's why Rabbi Akiva said that the 10 tribes would not return. But Rabbi Eliezer, a rabbi in those days, said that they would return. And so then the halakha, or the position that is taken by Orthodox Judaism today, is that the 10 tribes will return at the time of the Messianic era. Now, in the same book, A Matter of Return by Rabbi Raphael Eisenberg, on page 130, it says, the rabbis determined that the position of Orthodox Judaism is that the 10 tribes will return. And this is in the Sanhedrin in chapter 13. And furthermore, the fourth principle of Jewish faith, let's go back one slide. The fourth principle of Jewish faith in the document Mashmia Yeshua is that the 10 tribes will return. In the book Messiah and the Principles of Messiah in the Messianic Era in Jewish Law and Tradition, on page 21 and 22, the following is explained: that the 10 tribes of the northern kingdom will return. So here are the various sources that are quoted that state this. Among them being in the Talmud, Sanhedrin 110b, and Bamidbar, or Numbers Rabbah 1625. In the Torah Anthology to the Book of the 12 Prophets, Volume 2, page 308, it is explained that the 10 tribes will only unite with Judah in the end of days at the time of the final redemption. It's an event associated with Messianic times. It hasn't happened yet. In the book The Messiah Text by Raphael Patai on page 321, there's an explanation that in the daily Jewish prayers, there's a prayer for the ending of the exile and the coming of the Messiah. It says, the request for redemption, redemption is the end of the exile, and the coming of the Messiah are a part of the Amidah prayers, commonly called the 18 benedictions, and together with the Shema, or Hear, O Israel, these are the most important daily Jewish prayers that are recited 3 times a day. And so, of the Amidah prayers, called the 18 benedictions, prayed 3 times a day, 2 of these prayers are associated with the end of the exile and the coming of the Messiah. This is the 10th prayer. It is, blow the great shofar for our freedom, lift up a banner to gather our exiles, and gather us from the 4 corners of the earth. Blessed are you, O Lord, who gathers the banished of your people, Israel. So obviously they don't believe that the 12 tribes have been united today if in their daily prayers there's a praying for the end of the exile in the uniting of Northern Kingdom and Southern Kingdom. So here then, in the Matter of Return by Rabbi Raphael Eisenberg, it says, according to Rabbi Abarbanel, the return of the 10 tribes at the time of redemption is one of the principles of Jewish faith. And the source is Mashmia Yeshua, the 4th principle of faith. Now, it is a teaching, a belief within Judaism, as presented here in the book of Matter of Return by Rabbi Raphael Eisenberg, pages 132 and 133, that those of Judah, Jews will go out and look for and seek to find the 10 tribes. It says, during the past few centuries, the Jewish community in various parts of the world has made efforts to make contact with the lost 10 tribes and to bring about their return to the Jewish people. One of these efforts was that of the Jerusalem Rabbinate in the year 1900, and it was based upon a Jewish commentary. And the Jewish commentary said that those of Judah and Benjamin, or those of the Jewish people, will go out to look for the 10 tribes and to bring them back. And it says that this view is based upon the prophecy of Jeremiah, Jeremiah chapter 3, that in these days the house of Judah will walk with the house of Israel, and they will come together out of the land of the north to the land that I've given for an inheritance to your fathers. And so then the Jerusalem Rabbinate of 1900, they had a note, and in their note it stated the following. It was addressed to the B'nai Moshe, or it was addressed to the 10 tribes. It was signed by the rabbis, and the letter said, please, dear brothers, hasten and ascend to Mount Zion, the dwelling of his holiness, for our redemption is dependent upon you coming to Mount Zion. Yeah. Now, based upon the principle that in the Jewish understanding that someone from Judah or Benjamin would go out and to seek the 10 tribes, we have recorded in the New Testament a Jew from the tribe of Benjamin who was called by Yeshua to go out in the nations. Hallelujah. To preach and proclaim the message of Yeshua to the 10 tribes in the nations.
That's what he was doing.
Yeah.
So in Philippians 3:5 it says of Paul, he's from the tribe of Benjamin, and he grew up with a Pharisaic background. And in his testimony, he says in Acts 22 verse 3, he's a Jew, and he learned the Torah at the feet of Gamaliel, Rabbi Gamaliel. And then he again testifies in Acts 26:5 that he grew up and followed the most strictest sect of the Pharisees. Now today you would call the most strictest sect ultra-Orthodox Jews. And the ultra-Orthodox Jews today wear the black hats and the black coats. So if you would bring the same conditions that Paul learned the Torah, he would be regarded today as an ultra-Orthodox Jew. Black hat, black coat. So, in Paul's testimony before King Agrippa, in Acts 26:6 and 7, he says to King Agrippa, I'm standing before you and I'm being judged by the Jews because of the hope of the promise that God made to our fathers. It's a promise to our 12 tribes, and it's a promise by which they hope to come. So if it's a promise they hope to come, it hadn't happened yet. And what was the promise? That there would be the end of the exile and there would be a gathering uniting the 12 tribes of Israel. Paul did not believe that the 12 tribes of Israel was united in his day. In Ezekiel, in chapter 37, there's a prophecy about his people, and Ezekiel is shown a valley full of bones. And the bones were very dry. And he was asked in Ezekiel 37:3, can these bones live? And so he was told regarding the bones that, next slide, that those bones, in verse 11, the bones are the whole house of Israel. Yes. All 12 tribes. And then regarding the whole house of Israel, it says, they say, our bones are dried, our hope is lost, and we are cut off from our parts. So what's the hope? The hope is the promise of ending the exile and the coming of the Messiah. But as long as northern kingdom is separated from southern kingdom, that means there's still exile. That means we don't have the end of the exile, which means we don't have the Messianic era, and that's the promise and the hope. As long as we're in exile, our hope is lost. In other words, it's not a reality. So given that we have the phraseology, as long as we're separated from our parts, our hope is lost, Paul was going to use this word in Acts 28 verse 17 in sharing with Jewish leadership. And he explained what happened to him in the land, that he was delivered prisoner from Jerusalem into the hands of the Romans. And he then said in Acts 28:20, for the hope of Israel, I'm bound with this chain. What's the hope? To see the end of the exile. And because of his heart longing to preach Messiah and return to the Torah, return to Yeshua, the lawgiver, and for the people to receive the message, and for the exile to end, for that hope, he says, I'm going through all these trials and tribulations. I'm in these chains. Now in Isaiah chapter 49 verse 6, it says that you should be my servant to raise up the tribes of Jacob. The subject is raising up the tribes of Jacob. And regarding raising up the tribes of Jacob, it says in Isaiah 49:9, that you may say to the prisoners, go forth. So the prisoners are the exiles of Israel, and they're being told to go forth or leave their exile. It's a prophecy to them. Now in the book of Matter of Return by Rabbi Raphael Eisenberg on page 132, referring now to Isaiah 49:9, it says, prophesying about the future return of the exiles to the land, Isaiah says that ye may say to the prisoners, go forth. And so in the Midrash Rabbah, they say that this is referring to those who were scattered beyond the Sambatyon, who is the northern kingdom or the 10 tribes. That prophecy is about the 10 tribes. So given that it is a Jewish understanding that Isaiah 49:9 is speaking about the 10 tribes, and in the Sanchino Midrash Rabbah, volume 9, it repeats the understanding from the same verse, saying to the prisoners to go forth. It says that this is referring to the 10 tribes who were taken captive to Assyria. In the Torah Anthology to the Book of the 12 Prophets, volume 1, now this is quoting from Hosea 11, verse 10. It says, Hosea is written to the northern kingdom. He will roar like a lion. When he roars, the children will come trembling out of the west. So of the northern kingdom, it says they're going to be returning from the west. So one of the places where the exiles will be living is in the west. You might say Europe or the United States. Now in Zechariah chapter 10 verse 6, it explains that the 10 tribes will return to Israel. I will strengthen the house of Judah and deliver the house of Joseph. I will bring them back. So the commentary of deliver the house of Joseph, that's a reference to the 10 tribes. I will bring them back to the land of Israel. It's speaking about prophecies of the end of days. In the Messianic era, at the time of no more exile, there's not going to be envy between Ephraim and Judah. The Book of Manner of Return by Rabbi Raphael Eisenberg, page 132. When the 10 tribes return, there will be no envy between the tribe of Judah and the 10 tribes united. And this is quoting now from Isaiah in chapter 13. No, Isaiah chapter 11, verse 13. The envy of Ephraim will depart, and they that harass the adversaries of Judah will be cut off. Ephraim will not envy Judah. Judah will not vex Ephraim. Next, we're going to cover where the scriptures say are ultimately the designated places of return of the exiles when they're brought back. And these are the places where we're going to go over where the scripture says ultimately they will return to. They will return to Jerusalem, the mountains of Israel, Judea and Samaria, Bashan and Gilead, Lebanon, the southern part of Israel, the Negev, the desert of Israel, and then Edom, Moab, and Ammon. So let's look at the scriptures that tells us these things. In Jeremiah chapter 50, speaking about the prophecies about Babylon in the end of days, it says, you that escaped the sword, Jeremiah 51:50, let Jerusalem come to your mind. Let Jerusalem come to your mind. Return to Jerusalem. Ezekiel 37:22 says, I will make them one nation in the land upon the mountains of Israel. The mountains of Israel is Judea, Samaria, which by extension includes Jerusalem. Now in Micah chapter 7 verse 14, we're told that the 10 tribes will return to Bashan and Gilead. And so then it says, your people with your staff, the flock of your heritage, let them feed in Bashan and Gilead as in the days of old. So Bashan and Gilead today encompasses part of Jordan, and it includes parts of southern Syria. Zechariah 10:10 tells us the exiles will return to Gilead and Lebanon. I will bring them into the land of Gilead and Lebanon. So not only parts of Jordan and southern Syria, but parts of Lebanon as well. Obadiah 1:20 says, those specifically who were living in Zarephath and Sepharad. Now Sepharad is refers to Spain. Zarephath in the writings says it refers to France, and by extension France and Britain. So basically we can say those living in Spain, France, and Britain will return to southern Israel, and then we have Daniel 11:41. It says those that escape out of his hand will be Edom, Moab, and Ammon. So they'll be returning to Edom, Moab, and Ammon. Next, these are the Torah and Haftorah readings during the Sabbath of Sukkot. The Sabbath of Sukkot. And so you see, as part of the Haftorah readings, you're reading part of Gog and Magog, Ezekiel 38 and 39. Now, in the prayer book for Sukkot, the morning service, the first day of Sukkot, there's a reading from Zechariah chapter 14. And in verse 3 it says, the Lord will fight against the nations as he fought in the day of battle. So the commentary says that the day of battle is the day that Pharaoh and his army drowned in the Red Sea. Now in Ezekiel 38 and 39, here we're told that the Gog-Magog invaders, they do not come upon all the land of Israel. It specifically prophesied they come against the mountains of Israel. The mountains of Israel is Judea, Samaria, and Jerusalem. And the Almighty will bring judgment when they come against the mountains of Israel. In one way in which it happens, it's in the form of hail. And so in Ezekiel chapter 38 verse 22, it says, God will send an overflowing shower, a great hailstone, fire, and brimstone. So the note is taken that what happened historically when Egypt was being judged, there was hail there as well. So we see then in Ezekiel 38:18, Gog will come against the land of Israel. And Ezekiel 38:22, I will plead with him with pestilence, with blood, with hailstone, fire, and brimstone. And from this, Gog is defeated. And once we have the defeat of Gog, then the God of Israel declares the exile over. It says in Ezekiel 39:21, I will set my glory among the heathen, so the house of Israel that will know that I am the Lord their God from that day forward. They will know that who is the Lord their God, that Yeshua is the Messiah from that day forward. And the heathen will know that the house of Israel went into captivity because they trespassed against me. So why would Gog and Magog want to invade the mountains of Israel? I believe it is because the nations have declared a Palestinian state based upon 67 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital. And it's not being received and accepted in the land. So the armies are coming to enforce the decree, and as part of the Palestinian state that the nations want to be in bringing about the Palestinian state, they want to kick Jews out of their homes from the mountains of Israel. So the Gog-Magog war, I believe, is the nations coming to kick Jews out of their homes to enforce a Palestinian state. And God intervenes and says, no, I'm going to judge you. Now what I want us to do is see the parallel between what happened to Pharaoh and his army when he was defeated in Exodus chapter 15 and parallel it with Ezekiel 38 and 39, Gog and Magog. You're going to see a parallel, and Exodus 15 is going to prophesy a sequence of events. And so this is the ultimate result of the sequence of events. Wait, back. From the defeat of Gog and Magog, that's when the Arab mindset and heart is going to be changed regarding the conflict. The Arabs will become friendly toward the God of Israel and thus the exiles of Israel once there's the Gog and Magog defeat. And in Ezekiel 39:25, once Gog and Magog is defeated, the exile is declared as being over. So the exiles of Israel will return to their designated places, and once the exiles return, the Messianic kingdom will be established. So let's now look how this is prophesied in Exodus chapter 15. And so we have in Exodus 15 verse 4, Pharaoh and his armies drowned in the sea. Pharaoh's a type of the enemy of Israel in the end of days. And so the people replied this way in Exodus 15:11. Who is like unto you, O Lord, among the gods? Who is like unto you, glorious in holiness, fearful in praises? Now, this is sung traditionally every Sabbath. It's called Mika Mocha. And so this then is going to be a prophecy, that is, the defeat of Pharaoh and his army in the sea. It's going to be a prophecy of the future defeat of Gog and Magog. So now if you put in context, seeing this prophetically as the defeat of Gog and Magog, the next thing that happens in Exodus 15:14 is the people will hear and be afraid. Sorrow will take hold on the inhabitants of Palestine. So the people are calling themselves the Palestinians. They're wanting a Palestinian state. And once Gog and Magog is defeated, they're not going to realize their dream. So it's going to bring about sorrow. And then the dukes of Edom will be amazed. And the inhabitants of Canaan will melt away. Verse 16, fear and dread will fall upon them. And then it says, till your people pass over, and you will bring them and plant them in the mountain of your inheritance. So the sequence is, Pharaoh and his army is drowned in the Red Sea. That's prophecy of Gog and Magog. Sorrow will take hold upon the inhabitants of Philistia. And that's the pride of the Palestinians is broken. And then he's going to bring them in and plant them into their inheritance, right here, Exodus 15:17. So that's the sequence. The defeat, the call of the exiles to return, and them return to the mountain of their inheritance. And then once they return, then the kingdom will be established. And so what's associated then with this is the Arabs are going to become friendly after the defeat of Gog and Magog. And their hearts are going to turn to the God of Israel. And they'll have sympathies for the exiles of Israel. And this is a prophecy in Isaiah 16. It says, from Selah to the wilderness, so the daughters of Moab will be. Let my outcasts, who's the outcast? The exiles of Israel. Let my outcasts dwell with you. So the timing of this prophecy of his outcast dwelling with the daughters of Moab, the timing of it is verse 5. In mercy shall your throne be established. This is a prophecy about the Messiah and his rule and reign. He's setting up his kingdom. So before Messiah sets up his kingdom, the daughters of Moab will hide the outcasts of Israel. That's why Edom, Moab, and Ammon is one of the places of the return of the exiles of Israel. So then, after you bring them into the mountains of your inheritance, and the daughters of Moab will hide the outcasts of Israel, then the next thing we have is the Lord will reign forever and ever. So the parallel to this is after we have the judgment of the nations, the defeat of Gog and Magog, he brings the exiles back. Then we have Messiah setting his feet down on the Mount of Olives, Zechariah 14:4, and Zechariah 14:9. The Lord will be king over all the earth. So Exodus 15 is prophetically foreshadowing these events. Now, it's the role and task and function of the Messiah to gather the exiles of Israel. When is he going to do it? In Ezekiel 34, verse 11, it says, "Thus says the Lord God, Behold, I, even I, will both search my sheep and seek them out. And I will seek out my sheep, and I will deliver them out of all the places where they are scattered." This is the time reference when he's going to do it. He's going to do it in the cloudy and dark day. And so the cloudy and dark day is a reference to the day of the Lord. It's in a dark day, but it's in a cloudy day. The dark day is tribulation, or great tribulation. The cloudy day is the cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night. So then it says in Ezekiel 34:13, "I will gather them from the countries, and I will bring them into their own land, and feed them upon the mountains of Israel." He's going to do it in the cloudy and dark day, and he's going to bring them back to the mountains of Israel. So the day of the Lord is a day of darkness. Joel 2:1. The day of the Lord comes, it's a day of darkness. He's going to gather them in the cloudy and dark day. So we're going to be seeing now that when he gathers the exiles of Israel is during the 3.5 years of the Great Tribulation. In Revelation 7, a question is asked in verse 13. "Who are these in white robes, and where did they come from?" And he said, "You know, they came out of Great Tribulation." So Revelation 7, those in white robes, they came out of Great Tribulation. When's Great Tribulation? That's the last 3.5 years before Yeshua sets his feet down on the Mount of Olives. And then in answering, who are these that came out of Great Tribulation and where they come from? In answering that, it says in verse 16, "They will hunger no more, they will thirst no more, and the Lamb will lead them to living fountains of water." That is an answer to who are these that came out of Great Tribulation. That answer is a quote from Isaiah 49. Isaiah 49:10. "They will not hunger nor thirst, neither shall the heat nor sun smite them, for he that has mercy upon them, who is called the Lamb," in Revelation 7:17, "will lead them by springs of water." So the ones that came out of Great Tribulation is who Isaiah 49:10 is referring to. And who's Isaiah 49:10 referring to? It's referring to the exiles of Israel. And it says about those whom Isaiah 49:10 is speaking of, "He will wipe away all tears from their eyes." The exile is likened to a time of tears and mourning. Rachel's weeping for her children. Well, end of the exile, I can wipe away all the tears. So we're seeing then, Yeshua is going to gather the exiles in the cloudy and dark day, and he's going to gather them during the time of the Great Tribulation. And so there's an indication of this in Matthew 25:6. It says, "At midnight the cry was came, Behold, the bridegroom comes." So midnight is the middle of the night. If the tribulation is the night, the middle of the night is the Great Tribulation. It says in Isaiah 27:13 that it will come to pass on that day that the great trumpet will be blown, and they will come, and the outcasts in the land of Egypt, and they will worship the Lord in the holy mount at Jerusalem. So they're going to return through the blowing of the shofar. They're going to return through the blowing of the shofar. The beast will overcome those believers who try to fight against him. Revelation 13:1, it says, "I saw a beast rise up out of the sea." And in verse 4 it says, who is like unto the beast, and who is able to make war with him? So it says in verse 7, he made war with the saints and overcome them. So who is he fighting that he's overcoming? And in Revelation 13, it goes on to say, he who has an ear, let him hear. He that kills with the sword must be killed with the sword. So here it is. Those believers, those saints, who are fighting against the beast, using their own weapons, their own guns, he has the power to overcome them if they fight against him with their own guns. This is in contrast to another group of people who, in Revelation 15:2, they get the victory over the beast, over his image, over his mark, and over the number of his name. Now, who are these? Well, they're described as having harps, and they sing the song of Moses, and they sing the song of the Lamb. First of all, do you realize you cannot get the victory over the beast, his mark, his image, and the number of his name if it doesn't exist? It has to exist for you to get the victory over it. So when do we fully have the beast, his mark, his image, and the number of his name operating? It's for 42 months, Revelation 13. So the beast's mark, his image, and the number of his name is fully functional during the time of the Great Tribulation. So those who get the victory are overcoming him during the Great Tribulation. And they're described as having harps, and they're singing the song of Moses and singing the song of the Lamb. And so in Exodus 15 verse 1, after, or as Pharaoh and his army drowned in the Red Sea, Exodus 15 verse 4, it says, then sang Moses and the children of Israel this song. Here's what they sang. They sang, I will sing. They sang, I will sing. That's future. What they sang, they're indicating they're going to sing again. What they sang is the horse and his rider was thrown into the sea. So when are they singing it again? Revelation 15 verse 3. They're singing the song of Moses. And they're singing the song of the Lamb. So what is the song of the Lamb? And why are they playing harps? Psalm 137 verse 1, it says, by the rivers of Babylon we sat down, we wept whenever we remembered Zion. And then the question is asked in verse 4, how shall we sing the Lord's song in a strange land? And so what we're being told is by the rivers of Babylon, or in exile, you cannot sing the Lord's song in a strange land. You can't do it. So what is defined as the Lord's song? It's the song of Zion. So furthermore, in Babylon, look, you weep. Remember in Revelation 7, he's wiping all tears from their eyes? Well, in Babylon, you're weeping when you remember Zion. And while you're weeping, you're not even playing your harp. It's on the willow. In Babylon, you weep, you're not singing. Your harp's on the willow. Now, the 144,000 on Mount Zion will be playing their harps. Revelation 14 verse 1, a lamb stood on Mount Zion, 144,000, and here's what they're doing. The lamb and those 144,000, what they're doing is they're playing their harps. They're playing their harps. So those that get the victory over his beast, his mark, and his image and number of his name, they're playing harps. So where are they at? In getting the victory, where are they at? They're on Mount Zion. And they're singing the song of Moses and they're singing the song of the Lamb. Now in Psalm 137 verse 3, in Babylon, those that took us captive required of us a song, and they're in essence mocking, and they're saying, sing us one of the songs of Zion. Sing us the song of Zion. Verse 4, how shall we sing the Lord's song? So what is defined as the Lord's song? The Song of Zion. The Song of Zion is the Lord's song. Who's the Lord? He's the Lamb. The Song of Zion is the Song of the Lamb. What's the Song of Zion? It's the end of the exile. So what is the song that they're singing? to the Lamb. They're singing, He's delivered us from exile. We're no longer in exile. Our enemies not, and the enemies are not ruling over us. We're not even subject to the beast and the beast system. We've overcome the beast in His mark and His image and the number of His name. Now here's a principle that the end of the exile, this is in the Jewish understanding, the end of the exile is associated with the return of the Shekinah or the Shekinah. In the book The Messiah text by Raphael Patai, page 181, the title of the chapter of the book is The Ingathering, or the Ingathering of the Exiles, and the Return of the Shekinah. And it says, one of the themes of Messianic times is the ingathering of the exiles from the four quarters of the earth. Since the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple by the Romans in the year 70, Jews have prayed 3 times a day for the ingathering of the exiles, which is for them associated with redemption or the end of the exile. And so associated with this is the 10 tribes who were exiled by the Assyrians. And it's taught that they went beyond the river Sambatyon. And it says the 10 tribes will be gathered by the Messiah. So in the Sanchino Midrash Rabbah, it says, when the children of Israel were exiled, when they went into exile, the Shekinah went into exile with them. When they went into exile, the Shekinah went into exile with them. This is from the Talmud, Megillah 29a. Rabbi Simeon, son of Yohai, said, "Come and see how beloved are Israel in the sight of God, in that to every place to which they were exiled, the Shekinah went with them. They were exiled to Egypt, and the Shekinah was with them. As it says in 1 Samuel 2:27, Did I reveal myself unto the house of your father when they were in Egypt?" So the Shekinah went into exile with them. The Shekinah came out of Egypt with them. What was the Shekinah? The cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night. So it continues. And when they will be redeemed in the future, the Shekinah will be with them. Quoting Deuteronomy 30 verse 3, the Lord your God will return with your captivity. In the Hebrew, it does not say, and He shall bring back, but He shall return. This teaches us that the Holy One will return with them from their places of exile. So in Psalm 102 verse 16 it says, when the Lord builds up Zion, He will appear in, how will He appear when He gathers them? How will He appear? In His glory. And what is the building up of Zion? It's the building up of Jerusalem. What's the building up of Jerusalem? Psalm 147 verse 2. He gathers the outcasts of Israel. So when He gathers the outcasts of Israel, He will appear in His glory. What is His glory? Well, in Exodus chapter 13 verse 21, it says, the Lord went before them by day in a pillar of cloud. Exodus 40 verse 34, then a cloud covered the tent of the congregation, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. And so the cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night is called the glory of the Lord. He will appear in His glory. He will appear in the cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night. So the cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night, or the glory of the Lord, is a consuming fire. Exodus 24:16. The glory of the Lord abode upon Mount Sinai, and the cloud covered it. So the glory is the cloud. Verse 17. The sight of the glory was like a devouring fire. The glory is the cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night. Yeshua is the glory of God. Describing the New Jerusalem in Revelation 21:23, it said the city, the New Jerusalem, had no need of the sun, neither the moon to shine it, for the glory of God lit it, and the Lamb is the light. The Lamb is the glory of God. So Yeshua is the cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night. So Yeshua will return in a cloud. Luke 21 verse 27, you will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. He'll be coming in a cloud, great glory. He's coming, cloud, great glory. Cloud, great glory. It's the cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night. Cloud, great glory. So in stating that he's coming in a cloud and glory, and then it says in verse 28, when these things come to pass, your redemption draws nigh. He's coming in a cloud and glory, your redemption draws nigh. The cloud, glory, your redemption. Redemption's the end of the exile. So he's coming to end the exile in the cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night. We can see this in Isaiah 4 and 5. Remember, the Lamb and the 144,000 are on Mount Zion. So it says in Isaiah 4 5, the Lord will create upon every dwelling place of Mount Zion. How many places? Every. How much is every? It's more than one. Every means more than one. And upon her assemblies. How many assemblies? More than one. It's plural. So Mount Zion is called every dwelling place. Mount Zion is called assemblies. So Mount Zion is a collective name for multiple assemblies. And what is on every dwelling place? A cloud and a smoke by day and the shining of a flaming fire by night. You remember the principle that the miracles, when he ends the exile, will be superior to the ones when they brought the children of Israel out of Egypt? Well, he brought them out of Egypt with one cloud by day and pillar of fire by night. This time it's multiple ones all over the world. And there will be a tabernacle for a shadow in the daytime from the heat and for a place of refuge. So as he's leading, how did he lead? With the tabernacle? It says there will be a tabernacle. What's the purpose? It's for refuge from storm and rain. Well, that's not just literal physical storm and rain. Storm and rain refers to the enemy that opposes you. And so the cloud by day is a protection against your enemies. So in Isaiah 35 verse 2 it says, they will see the glory of the Lord. And when they see the glory of the Lord, it says, and the ransom of the Lord will return and come to Zion with songs and joy and gladness. So in describing the end of the exile, there you see the glory of the Lord. Isaiah 61 and 2, arise, shine, for your light has come. The glory of the Lord is risen upon you. And then it says in verse 2, his glory will be seen upon you. Seen upon you. Human eyes will be able to see the glory upon his people. Ezekiel 39:21, I will set my glory among the heathen. He will set his glory among the heathen. What? His glory is going to be in the nations of the world initially. His glory is among the heathen. So the house of Israel will know that I am the Lord their God from that day forward. Well, once Yeshua gathers his people in various countries of the world, cloud by day, pillar of fire by night, now the house of Israel will know that he's the Messiah. Why? Because he's not just gathering the Jews. He's gathering the Jews and what the world calls Christians. And the heathen will know that the house of Israel went into captivity for their iniquity because they trespassed against me. So, look at the connection. I will set my glory among the heathen. Now will I bring again the captivity of Jacob. So the bringing again the captivity of Jacob is associated with setting his glory among the heathen. The return is by the glory. In the Art Scroll of Genesis, Volume 2, page 1909, quoting from 1 Chronicles 17, verse 21, it says, your nation Israel, one nation in the world. And so The Hebrew word for one is ahad. Ahad. And the last two letters of ahad has the numerical value of 12, indicating the 12 tribes of Israel. And so, ahad, the first letter of ahad is aleph, which is the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet. It has a numerical value of what? So you have the aleph, and then the last two letters have the numerical value of 12. So the numerical value of ahad is 13. The last two letters is 12, so it's 12 plus 1. 12 is the 12 tribes of Israel. 1 is there in unity. So it says, united Israel is the bearer of God's glory on the earth. A factionalized Israel brings discredit to the one who made it his chosen people. So the God is only going to get his glory from him uniting the 12 tribes of Israel. The end result is he receives glory and he's glorified. So with that Jewish explanation, Yeshua said that they may be one. And what did they say? A united Israel shows forth the glory of God, that they may be one, that the world would believe that you sent me, and the world will know that you have sent me. Why will the world know it? Because the world's going to see him bringing his people back by the cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night. So now in Isaiah 44:23 it says, the Lord has redeemed Jacob, ended the exile, united the 12 tribes. He's redeemed Jacob and glorified himself in Israel. By redeeming Jacob, he glorifies himself. By redeeming Jacob, he glorifies himself. Isaiah 49:3, you are my servant Israel, in whom I will be glorified. I'm glorified through my people. So when Yeshua said, I pray that they may be one, he goes on to say in John 17:22, and the glory which you gave me, I've given them. So when his people are one, Yeshua receives glory. They recognize that he's the Messiah. And not only is Yeshua glorified, but now his people are glorified. When they're one, they get to rule and reign over the nations. Now, if we look at Isaiah 4:5, when it says the Lord will create upon every dwelling place of Mount Zion and her assemblies a cloud and a smoke by day and the shining of a flaming fire by night. It says in the King James, for upon all the glory, or over all the glory, shall be a defense. The word defense is the Strong's number 2646. It's the Hebrew word huppah. For upon all the glory will be a huppah. For upon all the glory will be a huppah. You know what a huppah is? It's a wedding canopy. So that cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night, and being in the cloud by day, or being led by the cloud by day and pillar of fire by night, that's called a huppah, a wedding canopy. So it's likened to a marriage. It's likened to a marriage. In the book Made in Heaven by Rabbi Kaplan, referring to Isaiah 4:5, it says, the huppah is uniquely related to the glory of God. The huppah is related to the glory of God. So the end of the exile is likened to a wedding and the joy of a wedding. Jeremiah 31:10, he that scattered Israel will gather him. It's talking about gathering Israel. The Lord has redeemed Jacob. The Lord has redeemed Jacob, then will the virgin rejoice. The redemption of Jacob is likened to a virgin rejoicing. And why is the virgin rejoicing? In the joy of a wedding. Isaiah 33:7, I will cause the captivity of Judah and the captivity of Israel to return. It's talking about ending the exile. And Jeremiah 33:10, again there will be heard in this place the voice of joy, the voice of gladness, the voice of the bridegroom, and the voice of the bride. That's wedding talk. So you will hear the joy of wedding, I'm going to cause to return the captivity of the land. Now, in Obadiah chapter 1, verse 21, where it says, "And saviors will come upon Mount Zion to judge the mount of Esau, and the kingdom will be the Lord's." According to the Jewish explanation, the saviors on Mount Zion are the 10 tribes of Israel. That they will be judging Esau. And once they judge Esau, then the kingdom will be the Lord's. What's the kingdom being the Lord's? That's Yeshua setting his feet down on the Mount of Olives and setting up his kingdom. But the liberators are going to be judging Esau. That's because as he's gathering the exiles back, he's judging Esau. He's opposing it. Next, I want to share with you how it's the role and the task of the 144,000 that they are leaders of the camps, of the peoples that are returning back to the land. And their ministry is associated with Sukkot. The ministry of the 144,000 are associated with Sukkot. And one of the reasons for celebrating Sukkot, or the Feast of Tabernacles, is you are to remember the Egyptian Exodus. So it says in Leviticus 23:34, the 15th day of the 7th month is the Feast of Tabernacles. You're to dwell in booths. Why? That your generations may know that I made the children of Israel to dwell in booths when I brought them out of Egypt. One of the reasons for celebrating the Feast of Tabernacles is to remember that when the children of Israel came out of Egypt, when they were in the wilderness, they dwelt in tents. Now, speaking of the 144,000 in Revelation chapter 7, verse 4, it says of them, "After this I beheld, lo, a great multitude of all nations." This is a reference to the Feast of Tabernacles. In speaking about the 144,000 in their ministry, we're seeing a great multitude from all nations. And here it's being explained that during the Feast of Tabernacles, a total of 70 bullocks were offered. During temple times, in addition to the regular daily sacrifice, the wine libation and the water libations, additional sacrifices were offered each day of Sukkot. The total number of oxen offered throughout the festival came to 70. Corresponding to the 70 nations who descended from Noah, as we can see in Genesis chapter 10. So now in Numbers chapter 29, when it talks about keeping the Feast of Tabernacles for 7 days, it says, on the first day you offer 13 bullocks, the second day 12, the third day 11. The fourth day 10, the fifth day 9, the sixth day 8, the seventh day 7. You add up 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7. It adds up to 70. The total number of bullocks that were offered during the 7 days of Sukkot, 70. Now, 70 is going to be associated with the number of nations in the world following the flood. In Deuteronomy 32:8, it says, "When the Most High divided the nations their inheritance, He separated the sons of Adam." When He separated the sons of Adam, He set the bounds of the people according to the number of the children of Israel. What's the number? Exodus 1:5. All the souls that came out of the loins of Jacob were 70. So the number of the children of Israel were 70, the number that went to Egypt. Now in Genesis 10, it says, "These are the generations of the sons of Noah after the flood. And these are the families of the sons of Noah. And from these were the nations divided after the flood." So Sukkot is called the Feast of All Nations. Zechariah 14:16 says, "All those that's left of the nations that came against Jerusalem will go up from year by year to worship the King, the Lord of hosts, to keep the Feast of Tabernacles." All nations are going to be required to keep the Feast of Tabernacles. Those that don't go, there will be no rain. So, now, in speaking about the 144,000, Revelation 7:9, there was a great multitude that's associated with Sukkot. Sukkot's called the Feast of All Nations. And then it says there's palms in their hands. Well, at Sukkot, you're going to wave palm branches. Leviticus 23:34, on the 15th day of the 7th month is the Feast of Tabernacles. On the first day, you are to take branches of palm trees. Now back to the 144,000, Revelation 7:4. They're a great multitude. They're waving palms. And now they're crying with a loud voice, salvation to our God. This is also a reference to tabernacles, because it is explained here, on the first 6 days of Sukkot, one time a circle is made around the altar in the temple, but on the 7th day, Hoshana Rabbah, you circle the altar 7 times. And so then, as they circle the altar, they shout these words, Hosanna, save now. Hosanna, save now. Loosely translated, salvation to our God. So in describing the 144,000, there's a reference of their ministry associated to Sukkot. There's a great multitude, which no man can number. They're waving palms. And they're crying salvation to our God. Pharaoh's heart was hardened so that God's name could be sanctified. In the commentary on the Torah by Ramban, Nachmanides, to Exodus, page 79, it says, Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and Pharaoh hardened his heart. Thus Pharaoh refused to let the children of Israel go for the glory of God. And this is similar to what's said in Deuteronomy chapter 2 verse 30. God hardened his spirit and made his heart obstinate. Still speaking about Pharaoh. So that his name may be declared throughout all the earth. Similarly, we have back, thus will I magnify myself and sanctify myself, and I will make myself known in the eyes of many nations, and they will know that I am the Lord. That's Ezekiel 38:28. That's the defeat of Gog. So Israel is prepared, Israel is preserved in exile for the purpose that God's name may be sanctified and glory can be given to his name. From the Midrash Rabbah, volume 5, it is written, For my name's sake will I defer my anger, and for my praise will I refrain for you, that I cut you not off. Isaiah in chapter 48, verse 9. This text speaks of Israel. For my name's sake will I defer my anger. My name's sake refers to Israel, of whom the Holy One, blessed be He, connected His name to by declaring, I am the Lord your God, Exodus 20 verse 2, with whose name Israel He combined His own. On this account the Holy One, blessed be He, deferred His anger with Israel, for He did not banish them from the world, and only exacted punishment from them in small degrees in exile in order to cleanse them, not seeking to blot them out, so that His name might not suffer being profaned in the nations. We find, in fact, that when Israel was in Egypt, they rebelled against the Holy One, and He wished to consume them, but He deferred His anger for His name's sake, and did not execute His intent. Thus it is written in Ezekiel 20 verse 8, Neither did they forsake the idols of Egypt. Then I said, I will pour out my fury upon them. Likewise, when Israel went forth in the wilderness, they rebelled against him, and the Holy One, blessed be he, sought to consume them, but deferred his anger for his name's sake. As it says, but the house of Israel rebelled against me in the wilderness. Then I said, I will pour out my fury upon them, but I was wrought for my name's sake. In the same way, the children of the generation of the wilderness rebelled against the Holy One, blessed be he. He sought to consume them, but deferred his anger with them for his name's sake, swearing that he would call them to account during the oppressions of heathen governments. But he did not bring about their complete annihilation, because it says, Then I said, I will pour out my fury upon them in the wilderness. Nevertheless, I withdrew my hand. I lifted up my hand unto them also in the wilderness. And for my praise will I refrain from you. So the principle is, they deserved a greater punishment, but he preserved them and held back his greatest anger, so that ultimately, when they repent and he redeems them, he could receive glory and he can be glorified. That's the principle. So, continuing the Midrash Rabbah explanation, it's for the purpose of preserving Israel in exile, so that the God of Israel can be sanctified and his name glorified when he redeems them, is why in exile they were not cut off. So, redemption, or a purpose of redemption, is the sanctification of the name of the Lord. So the verse says, Do not desecrate my holy name, but I shall be sanctified among the children of Israel. There is nothing worse than the desecration of God's name. Ezekiel refers to the fact that exile is a desecration of God's name. Ezekiel 36:20. When they entered the nations into which they came, they desecrated my holy name when it was said of them, These are God's people, yet they had to leave his land. In turn, the redemption is the sanctification of God's name, quoting from Ezekiel 36:23. I will sanctify my great name, which was desecrated among the nations, which you profaned. And the nations will know that I am God, when I am sanctified in you before their eyes. In the book, The Messianic Idea in Israel by Joseph Klausner, page 238, it explains, the redemption itself is but an act of mercy, which the Lord will do for his people for the purpose of sanctifying his name. So we see with the defeat of Gog and Magog, Ezekiel 38:23, I will magnify myself and I will sanctify myself. And I will be known in the eyes of many nations, and they will know that I'm the Lord. In Matthew 24:3, Yeshua was asked, what's the sign of your coming? What's the sign of your coming? And he ends up answering by saying, the Son of Man will come in a cloud and great glory, and when you see things come to pass, look up, for your redemption draws nigh. Draws nigh. He's coming in a cloud and glory because of your redemption. Your redemption is the end of the exile. So Yeshua is answering when he's returning, and the sign, the sign of his return is him gathering the exiles of Israel. Because he does that in the 3.5 years before he sets his feet down the Mount of Olives. That 3.5 years is the sign that he's coming. So the way it comes about is from the birth of the biblical state of Zion. And so Zion is a nation born in a day. Isaiah 66:8, shall a nation be born at once, or in a day? As soon as Zion travailed, she brought forth her children. Now I believe that Isaiah 66:8 is the leaders in the land, called the governors of Judah, in Zechariah chapter 12, when the nations try to impose a Palestinian state on 67 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital. They will reject accepting the West Bank as being a Palestinian state, and the leadership, the governors of Judah, will rise up and they will declare an independent state in one day, and that declaration is going to bring about great travail. And as soon as she travails, she brings forth her children, the end of the exile. So the declaration of that independent state is a trigger sign of the birth of the children, the end of the exile. So when you see this, the birth of the biblical Zion, the declaration of the independent state, when you see this, the hand of the Lord will be known to his servants and his indignation toward his enemies. Zion, or the family meaning of Zion, in Hebrew of Zion, the family meaning of Zion, it means a sign. So often Christians will ask, how do I know when to go to the land? What they're saying is, what's the sign? The sign is Zion. The sign is biblical Zion being established. So as soon as Zion travailed, Zion is the Strong's number 6726. And it says it's the same as the Strong's number 6725, which is Zion. Now Zion and Zion have the exact same Hebrew letters, which is Zadi, Yod, Vav, Nun. Same letters. The difference between the two is how you do the vowel pronunciation. But in the original biblical text, there is no vowels. So how do you know when you come to those four letters whether it is Zion or Zion, which means the sign? You only know by context. So Rachel is weeping for her children, Jeremiah 31 verse 15. She's told in verse 16, quit weeping, because there's hope that her children will come to their own border. And specifically it's referring to Ephraim or Joseph, meaning the 10 tribes. And it says, quit weeping, your children will come to their own border. Set you up Zion. It could be read, set you up Zion. So the sign of Ephraim returning to the land is Zion. That's the sign. And Ezekiel 39, 21, and 25. So you have, what is a sign that indicates the end of the exile? Biblical Zion. Another indicator where the exile is declared over is the defeat of Gog and Magog. I will set my glory among the heathen. This is following the defeat of Gog and Magog. Now will I bring again the captivity of Jacob. So one sign is the birth of biblical Zion, the declaration of the independent state. The exile is declared over. With the defeat of Gog and Magog, the exile is declared over. This is another sign. The end result is the fulfillment of the prophecy of Ezekiel 37, 15 through 28, where Ezekiel was instructed to take 2 sticks and join them together. And one stick, or in Hebrew it's 8, it means tree. One tree is for Judah and his companions, and another stick, or tree, is for Joseph, the stick of Ephraim. So really it's 8, it's a tree. What tree do you think is coming together? An olive tree. And take the 2 sticks and make them one. They will become one in your hand. And I will make them one nation in the land upon the mountains of Israel. The gathering uniting the 12 tribes of Israel. The end of the exile, he's going to bring them back to the mountains of Israel. And when this happens, David my servant will be king over them, and they will have one shepherd. That is, when the exile ends, Yeshua the Messiah, who is shepherd and king, will be over the 12 tribes of Israel, and they will walk in his judgments and observe his statutes and do them. They will follow his Torah. Because Yeshua is the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, Revelation 19, verse 16. And Yeshua is the king of Israel, and at this point there'll be a revelation. He's not only the Messiah, he's not only the king of Israel, but he's Yahweh. And the Lord will be king over all the earth. Yeshua is the King of Kings. Yahweh will be king over all the earth. And that day there will be one Lord and his name one. So in the completion of the process, Yeshua will be recognized as Messiah by his people, by all 12 tribes. He will have gathered them from the nations. They will know that he's not only the Messiah, but he's Yahweh. So let's summarize the last part of this teaching. Judaism teaches that the 12 tribes of Israel are not united today. The gathering and uniting of the 12 tribes of Israel by the Messiah is one of the foundational principles of Jewish faith. The hope of Israel is the end of the exile of the 12 tribes of Israel, and the Apostle Paul preached the hope of Israel in his ministry. Among the places where Ephraim and Judah will return from exile is the mountains of Israel, or the West Bank. When Gog is defeated in the mountains of Israel, Ezekiel 38 and 39, Yahweh will declare the end of the exile. Yeshua delivered his people out of Egypt, leading them via the cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night. Yeshua will end the exile of his people in the nations when he brings them back via the cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night. The cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night is called the glory of the Lord, or the Shekinah. And the end of the exile is likened to a wedding and the joy of a wedding. When Yeshua gathers the exiles of Israel from the nations, they will be led dwelling in tents, like the children of Israel when they were led in the wilderness. The end of the exile is associated with the celebration of the Feast of Tabernacles, or Sukkot. The 144,000 are the leaders of the various camps in the world when Yeshua gathers the exiles of Israel via the cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night. The end of the exile brings sanctification to the name of Yeshua. When Yeshua gathers the exiles of Israel during the 3.5 years of the Great Tribulation, his people will get the victory over the beast, his mark, his image, and the number of his name. When Yeshua gathers the exiles of Israel, he will be glorified. When Yeshua gathers the exiles of Israel, he will be one with his people, and Israel will be glorified with him. When Yeshua gathers the exiles of Israel, he will be king over all the earth, and all people will know that he is Yahweh when he sets up his messianic kingdom. And so this is the teaching on the principles of the greater Exodus, and how the things that happened to the forefathers foreshadow what happens to their descendants. And by knowing the principles of how he delivered his people from Egypt, it gives us our foundation of understanding how he will gather the exiles of Israel in the end of days. So they were led by the cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night. They will be led by the cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night. And this, the cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night, is Yeshua. He's going to bring us back during the 3.5 year period of the Great Tribulation. The nations are going to be judged at that time. And when he brings his people back, he's going to be glorified. It's likened to a marriage and the joy of a marriage. So now, once we have the marriage, the end of the exile, now we have to celebrate. In the 1,000 years, or the period of time, once he sets his feet down on the Mount of Olives, that is, the kingdom is the celebration of the marriage. And so, the end of the exile and Messiah being recognized as the Messiah and be proclaimed king over all 12 tribes is such a glorious event. It will be celebrated initially for 1,000 years, but then for all eternity.
Hallelujah.
This is the gospel of the kingdom of Messiah. Shalom.